Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. James here as ever for today's fantastic video, and I'm delighted to be joined by an audit and assurance expert in Erin Morton today. Erin, say hello to everyone who's tuning into this video who has got an audit and assurance exam coming up and they need some top tips.
Hi everyone.
Erin, they're panicking out there. Look guys, today we've got three major top tips. Erin is an expert and tutor in this field. I've put all of her details in the bottom. She's given up her time today and we're going to be going through three key areas. But Erin, let the guys know as to say, what's your experience in audit and assurance?
Well, I was an auditor, which is how I ended up getting the very lucky job of becoming an audit lecturer. So I used to work for a mid-tier firm a long time ago. I left there in 2003 and then I became a lecturer looking after ACCA students, and I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome stuff. So if you've got the audit and assurance, that's the AA or F8 paper coming up, everyone, this is the video you need to watch. Erin's been doing this how many years now? I'd also like to point out I passed the exam as well, first time. So we're going to be pinging ideas, short and sharp tips for you as well. So Erin, kick us off. What's the first main area, first main tip to pass the audit and assurance examination?
I think the first big thing you really need to think about is your own time management and thinking about how long you actually have to prepare yourself for this exam. So it's very simple to believe that the longer you have, the more better prepared you'll be, but also using that time as wisely as you possibly can. So allowing yourself some time to set up a structure of your plan. Have a phase for tuition, making sure you've got plenty of time to absorb the information, but also allow a good amount of time to revise as well. And when I say revise, I mean going over questions, exam standard question practice, timing yourself, setting up answer plans, and also doing a mock exam and getting feedback on your answers as well.
Oh, spot on. And where does the time go in the lead up to the exam as well? I remember doing it myself and it just goes like that, where you think, oh, I've got loads of time for tuition. Then, you know, I'll do a few past papers here and there. And before you know it, the exam's in 2 days' time. Oh, my word. But what's the main things that you see from your students then in terms of time management?
It's the last minute rush at the end. It's the I've read the textbook, I've done lots of revising of the notes, but they haven't actually looked at the exam questions themselves. And then what we find with audit and assurance is that they'll pick up an exam question, they'll look at the requirement and they won't understand what it means because they haven't seen it time and time again. And it takes practice to really feel confident that you know how to approach that answer. So you need to do it from as early as possible. You need to look at exam questions alongside your tuition so that you get plenty of time to get used to the terminology.
Absolutely spot on. And sometimes you just got to force yourself. I remember being in that situation, sit down, 10 marker, and then doing it to time as well. It makes such a difference, picking up on those keywords, and the learning curve just goes, it skyrockets the more you do.
Definitely.
Oh, rock and roll in terms of that, but you're now bringing back all those evenings, all those weekends, all those early morning starts of audit and assurance. But it does also link into the advanced audit and assurance module as well. So would you say that the key competencies that you do at that level will pay dividends in that in the actual professional paper as well?
Absolutely. Statistically, people fare better, or students fare better at the professional stage if they have done better at the skills stage. So the more you look at how to approach your studies at the skills level, you're setting yourself up to pass at the professional level. So if you think of it like a race and it's the hurdles, if you maintain a technique and you get your technique right at the beginning of the race, then the end parts, the last couple of hurdles and the sprint at the end will be much more successful. So you do need to get your exam technique and your exam methods and approaches ready now.
I completely agree. And for anyone who's subscribed to my channel before knows that unfortunately I did fail the advanced audit and assurance paper. So I know what that feeling it's like, and it's not ideal, I'll be honest. But just so the viewers know as well, what is the actual sort of pass rate for audit and assurance for the foundation paper?
So yeah, I mean, you're not alone with the advanced audit and assurance paper, because the global pass rate is pretty low, and that's because of the exam technique needed to get ready for
Mm.
that paper. Audit and assurance also has a pretty low pass rate. Globally, it's normally competing with performance management to be the
Mm.
lowest at the applied skills level. So you're looking at somewhere between the mid 30s to early 40s in
Yeah.
terms of a global pass rate.
Yeah, and especially for someone like myself, who I never really worked in audit, we had very minimal experience. And I remember turning up to college or online classes as well. We got people who do it Monday to Friday, and they go, "Oh, you know, audit risk X, Y, and Z," and they go, "Oh my word, it's a marathon, not a sprint on this." So don't lose faith on it, I would say.
And I also think, just to kind of keep this real, is that the vast majority of ACCA students are not auditors either. So I
Mm.
think there's a lot of inbuilt issues with confidence, because people think, okay, I've got this topic, I don't know anything about it, I've never worked in audit and assurance before, so I'm going to be really rubbish at it. But
Mm.
the vast majority of ACCA students are in your shoes, and I've seen lots of auditors fail this exam because they have looked at the way that they do their work, and they haven't looked at exam technique. And that's what you need. It's a game, and you've got to be able to win, and you've got to look at how to approach this exam, not how to do your audit work in an office.
Mm. Oh, but it comes with time, sitting yourself down, but then also think about the time which you actually have available in your life as well, whether you've got children, you've got other commitments, you're working full time, or if you're very lucky to be a student with a free Monday to Sunday. I don't know in terms of it. That's no, mega.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
a really good one in terms of that. What do you think about? Sorry, I've half interrupted you there. Shall I say?
that's
Go
all
on.
right. Don't worry. Go on, carry
Talking,
on.
I was going to say, I thought we were going to swiftly move on to a tip number 2 in terms of it, but what are we thinking? Because the viewers is there going, James, shut up, come on.
I was just going to add about the time you have. You know, realistically, whatever exam sitting you're going to be doing this exam, how long you've got to fit in some life plans as well,
Mm.
so that it's just not all study. And I do think it's counterproductive to throw yourself at one topic and just do nothing else apart from that. So, you know, studying in bite-sized chunks, so that you can go off and do something nice or fun or relaxing, or go for a run, or do something that you like doing, James. So,
Yes.
you know, plenty of exercise, but that will help clear your mind. It will help you then absorb the information that you've just been working on, and then you can go again. So just be aware to factor some time in for yourself as well
Mm.
during the study process.
Absolutely spot on, Aaron, in terms of that as well. But now, as a professional sort of guest, I now say, what are we going for? Our tip number 2. What have we got jotted down?
Tip number 2, I would say, is on the subject of time, looking at your approach to time in the exam itself. So we've looked at time during your studies, but when you get to the exam, remembering how long you've got for each question and each section of the exam. We know that there's 2 sections. We've got section A, which is going to be short, bite-sized scenarios, which there's 3 of them. You're going to have 5 questions on each of those scenarios, and they're going to be objective test questions. So, you know, approaching that, if you've been well prepared, looking at the syllabus, trying to get through that as quickly as possible. But for 30 marks, you've got 54 minutes to complete it.
Mm.
Then you've got the remainder of the exam, section B, which is the remaining 70 marks, and you've got 3 questions. So you've got 2 20 markers, and you've got a big 30 marker with big chunky scenarios to get through. So we need to think about time management. We need to make sure that you're sticking to the 1.8 minutes per mark wherever you
Mhm.
can, so that you allow yourself to finish the paper, because so many students don't get to finish the exam.
Mm. And I think having the discipline in the exam situation to say, look, I've only got whatever it may be, 30 minutes on this question. And when you see it on the clock, you've got to be disciplined and move on as well
Yeah.
in terms of it. But
And
it comes with that question practice, though.
it does. And I remember actually doing that as well in my exams. I remember very clearly sitting in the Barbican Centre, which is where my exams were in the skills level papers, and putting my watch in front of me and just looking, going, right, I've got to move on. I have to finish this now, and I have
Mm.
to move on. So that I got every opportunity to put something down for every requirement.
Absolutely spot on. But when it comes to the requirement though, what do you focus in on from your experience?
So the first thing we talk about is the verbs that they are using in the requirement. So we have to make sure that we have looked at exactly the wording of the requirement and what it actually means. What's the examiner asking of you?
Hmm.
So for example, if it's identify and explain, what does that mean? Well, identify means that they want you to use the scenario. You need to take that from the scenario, and maybe it's up to half a mark for that particular point. Explain is then asking for more depth. So
Well,
therefore you need to make sure that you do give, sorry, I didn't.
I'm going through in my mind all those ones of, oh, that was the half mark there. Then it's to the next one. So, oh no, carry on.
See.
I completely agree. It's
I was
bringing
thinking
back
you'd
all that
lost me
study.
then. Yes, so identify, taking from the scenario, explain, asking in more depth, explaining what the point was. Why did the examiner put that in the scenario in the first place? So looking at the verbs that they're using, and that will then give you an idea of how much you need to write for each of those requirements.
Spot on. And for any students out there who are doing practice questions, I remember the days of doing it to time, then reviewing my answers and being really critical of myself that I haven't actually answered the requirement and just giving yourself a naught, I'm afraid, on it. But it's because it's that learning curve again, so that you don't
It
make
is.
that mistake in the exam.
It is, and it goes back to the point, don't start looking at that 2 weeks before the exam. You need to be looking at the exam questions much earlier so that you can get that sense of confidence that you are putting down something that will give you marks.
Absolutely spot on. And it comes with that question analysis as you're going through. What are the key terms I can pick up on? And what the external always goes on about is students fail to relate their answer back to the scenario. It's far too textbooky. I don't know if that's something
Yep.
you've heard before.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, we look at the suggested answers and we think, oh, that's what we've got to regurgitate for the exam, but it's not possible. And so there'll be various different answers that you could get, and all of them will be valid to be given marks for. So yes, it's about keeping it as clear as possible and explaining as succinctly as possible as well. You don't have to write absolutely loads in this exam.
I think having that clear and concise mindset as you go through, it's a case of if I'm going to write down waffle and it isn't answering the requirement, I'm afraid it's going to get naught. So why am I
Yes.
wasting my energy and effort writing it down? Was something I definitely learned when it came up to the final week or two, because reviewing answers and going through them and realizing, well, I've written 8 lines here and I've not given myself any marks. So what's the external or the marker going to think in the
Yeah,
real one?
absolutely.
But anything else from the actual exam process itself that comes to mind that you wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if you didn't get off your chest?
Um, it would be making sure that you've looked at the breakdown in the marks as well. So we've talked about the terminology that the examiner uses, but we also need to think about then how many points do we have to raise? How many things do they need us to create for our answer plan? And so, for an audit risk question, for example, which is always poorly attempted by a lot of candidates, it will be a case of they ask you to identify and explain audit risks from the scenario, and then explain the auditor's response to those risks. So if that's a 16-mark question, it's asking us for 2 things. So it's asking us to pick out audit risks, and then it's asking us for the auditor's response. So it's putting together a plan and saying, okay, it's a 16-mark question. This looks massive. This is scary. But actually, break it down. We're asking for 8 things. So you've got to then run through that scenario and see if you can find 8 audit risks in the scenario, and then explain why they're audit risks. And then the other marks are then thinking about putting yourself in the auditor's shoes. Okay, so if I was given this problem at the beginning of an audit process, how am I going to manage it? Does it mean I have to do some specific substantive testing in that area? Do I need to bring in an expert? Do I need to talk to the directors about it? So what kind of things do we have to do?
And just to add on to that, going through the scenario, you usually find points as you go through. So you've got to come up with a system as to say, right, as I'm going through it, something to note it off and check it off, because you go from page to requirement back to the scenario. And one word I'd highly recommend not to use, and that is the word check.
Oh, don't
It's,
use check.
oh,
No.
for anyone who's taking notes right now, please write that down. I got that into my system that any time I wrote check, it just got a black pen out or just screw up the paper, throw it away.
Yeah,
Because
eliminate it from your vocabulary right now until audit and assurance is over with.
yes, absolutely spot on in terms of that. No, absolutely fantastic tips there. And anyone, just get that jotted down. Ping this video on to anyone else who's doing audit and assurance as well, because the tips we're going through right now, I'd have wished to have known beforehand in terms of it. But let's move on to actually tip 3 in terms of it. So what have we got down for tip 3?
So tip 3 is about the approach to the computer-based assessment. So the audit and assurance paper is going to be done on the platform, and it's how to approach your exam question. So now we will have a split screen. You'll have your requirements, which are down on the right hand side, and then you'll have your scenario on the left hand side. And you'll also have, for audit and assurance, because we don't have many numbers, we just then have a word processing area for you to input your information, which is also on the right hand side. So a big tip will be to make sure that you familiarize yourself with that platform, or with the skill that you need to type out your answers rather than write out your answers. So don't spend your entire studies just writing out exam answer questions. Use the platform or use a Word document to then get yourself familiar with typing out. One thing that's really good to do, to remember, is in this CBE platform, is that you can highlight things in the scenario. You can also drag and drop into your answer area as well. So you can set up your plan and you can create a much more user-friendly approach to your exam. So by being able to kind of highlight and bring things into your answer plan, it will then get you ready to then, attack and write as much as you can on each of those points.
I think the students listening into this are going to start to enjoy audit and assurance at this rate. But I think if that for that tactic, it's got to be practice going through it. And it's not going to be comfortable from what you're used to in terms of it. So you just got to put yourself out there. I know the resources on ACCA's website and through providers as well. But if students want any advice on it, they can get in touch with you as well, as I said. But I completely agree with the computer-based examination, because there will be students who are watching this right now who may only log on and use the system for the first time in the exam, but just don't do it.
No, it's, set ourselves up to succeed. So use everything that we have available to us in our preparation for the exam. But it's part of the battle. You definitely need to practice that as well.
Oh, spot on. I mean, for anyone who's taking notes at the moment, the classic one is always, if you fail to prepare, Google how that sentence ends.
We know where that ends.
So this is where I start off nice at the start. Now we've got to get serious, because it can be the difference. Where have you had students that have got, say, 48s, 49s in terms of it?
Many, yeah, and it's a lot of it's always been down to exam question practice, and now with the CBE platform and it's moved away from paper base, it's that kind of denial process that you have to go through that to answer the exam. So definitely it will tip you over to a pass if you practice early.
And it links back to that exam technique as well, where you can usually tell students who have put in the exam technique, done the past paper questions, picked up on those verbs, that's where the massive added value is, in terms of take the concepts and then apply it to what is in the actual scenario that you're given.
Yep, it's all about tactics.
Tactics. All right. Well, have we got any final tactics then for students who are listening in? They've got their pen and paper at the ready. What are your final things off your mind that you couldn't live with yourself without letting audit and assurance students know about?
Tactics are, see this as a process. So the audit and assurance syllabus is a logical process. It starts from the very beginning of the audit process, what the auditor has to think about before they even go out and visit a client, all the way through to the final point when they're making a decision on whether to form an opinion that says the financial statements are true and fair and properly prepared or not. And so the exam needs to be approached in a very logical way. So in your preparations, make sure that you give yourself time, make sure that you have practice questions, make sure that you are disciplined so that
Mm.
you are timing yourself, and look at those verbs and all the things that we've talked about in this session, and then use those and be as calm as possible in the exam, confident that you've actually given yourself the best preparation. And so then you can see this and go, right, I have done absolutely everything that I need to do to get ready for this exam. I can then just mimic what I did in an exam question a few days ago. And so then I can just pretend I'm not in an exam, and I will do just as well as I did before.
Oh, absolutely spot on. I couldn't agree with you more. There's some really good points raised in there, and at the end of the day, it's going to lower your anxiety going in, because
Totally.
every student gets nervous before going in. But the reason why you get nervous is because it matters, you care, and you've devoted all that time and energy. But you know, if you follow these tips within today's session, what we've talked about, honestly, from being an audit and assurance student myself and doing the advanced paper, these are the tips which I'd have wanted to know myself personally before sitting it. So if you're watching this and you've got other friends who are in classes, wherever they may be, send it over to them. They are definitely going to benefit. But we've gone through the top tips now in terms of it. Erin, I must say thank you so much for catching up today as well. As I said,
welcome.
everyone, it's been a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. But for all the viewers watching out there, Erin's details are in the description of this video. If you have found the tips helpful as well, feel free to give it a massive like down there. And any comments, any questions that you have from it today, leave it in the description. Myself and Erin, more than happy to help out and to answer it as well. But thank you very much. Feel free to subscribe to get access to all the other free videos. But as always, on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. Cheers.